Now say it with me. An African cannot be a foreigner on African land. An African cannot be a foreigner on African land. An African cannot be a foreigner on African.
I want you to listen on how illegal migration is justified, and teaching Africans to be entitled even when they are the wrong ones for entering South Africa illegal.
Africa. Someone from Central Africa cannot be considered a foreigner on all 5 regions of Africa, and the same applies for all the other regions of Africa. An African cannot be a foreigner on African land. How can you be an African but be considered a foreigner in Africa? Why are you then an African if you are going to be a foreigner on African soil? Ne? An African cannot be a foreigner on African land. An African cannot be a foreigner on...
You are confusing who you are with where you belong legally. Your identity as an African is eternal. No one can take that. But your legal rights end exactly where another sovereign nation's constitution begins. Let me ask you, if a South African man enters illegal in Zimbabwe, should Zimbabwean police arrest him? Or should they say, he's African, so we can't treat him as an illegal criminal? Of course they will arrest him, because under Zimbabwean law, he is an illegal foreign national. You are using the word foreigner to mean enemy or outsider. That's not what it means. A foreigner is simply a citizen of another country. If I am a South African in Zimbabwe, I am a foreigner, not because I'm unwelcome, but because I am subject to Zimbabwean law, not South African law. So when you say it's impossible to be a foreigner in Africa, you aren't speaking law, you're speaking poetry. The universe awaits your acknowledgement, and poetry doesn't get you through a border post. So my question to you is, are you trying to liberate Africans, or are you trying to mislead Africans into getting arrested?
Just African. Simple. An African cannot be a foreigner on African land. Don't let anyone else convince you otherwise. The only reason an African is considered a foreigner is through colonial laws and colonial systems. That's the only way Africans are considered foreigners, when they cross the borders which came by colonizers. So a group of colonizers sat in a room and said, we are going to draw lines.
Imagine your biological brother lives in his own house, and you live in yours. You share the same parents, the same blood, the same last name, and the same childhood memories. He will always be your brother. That is your identity, your bond, your truth. But does that mean you can walk into his house at 2 a.m., open his fridge, take his food, sleep in his bedroom, and invite your friends over without asking him? Of course not. His house is his jurisdiction. He has keys, a lease, and rules. If you enter without permission, he has every right to say, you are my brother, but right now, you are a trespasser in my home. Being a trespasser doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It doesn't mean you aren't family. It simply means you are currently in a space governed by his rules, not yours. Now scale that up to a continent. Africa is not one house. It is 54 different houses with 54 different door locks, 54 different constitutions, and 54 different sets of rules. A Nigerian in South Africa is a brother in the living room, but a foreign national at the front door. The South African state has the right to say, you are welcome here, but you must knock first, state your business, and follow my house rules while you are inside. So when you say an African cannot be a foreigner, you are confusing the blood in our veins with the laws on our books. My brother will always be my brother, but if he refuses to respect my house rules, he is still getting escorted out by security. That is not betrayal. That is sovereignty. So if I am your brother, can I use your car without asking? Can I withdraw money from your bank account? If not, then why do you expect an entire country's constitution to bow to a bloodline? You are right that they weren't foreigners in the original sense. But they also weren't citizens in the original sense. Pre-colonial Africa didn't have nation-states with citizenship papers. It had kings, chiefs, and emperors who demanded allegiance, tribute, and permission to enter. So if you want to go back to the original sense, then you must also accept that a traveler had to present himself to the Oba or the king, offer gifts, state his purpose, and receive permission before stepping foot in that territory. Entering unannounced was considered an act of hostility. So even in the original sense, you could not just wander in. There were rules. The difference is that today, The king is the state, the gift is your visa fee, and the permission is your passport stamp. The system changed form, but the principle, that a sovereign has the right to control entry, is as African as it is European. Let me ask you this. If colonial laws are the only reason Africans are considered foreigners, then why did every single independent African nation, from Ghana in 1957 to South Africa in 1994, keep those same borders and passport laws after independence? Not one African country abolished its immigration laws when the colonial flag came down. They chose to keep them because they understood that sovereignty means control. So if you want to abolish those laws, you are not fighting colonialism anymore. You are fighting the independent, democratically elected African governments that uphold them today. Are you ready to tell a Ghanaian president that his immigration laws are colonial and should be ignored? Because that is where your argument leads. If you really believe your philosophy that much, it's about time you practice it. Go with your followers, enter any African countries without proper documentation. Prove us wrong non-believers that you are not foreigners on African land and document it on social media.